Yo,
Hello.
here we are, Sunday Hangout already.
I'm going to share this.
Do it.
I always feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
On Facebook?
Maybe.
You do. You know what you're doing.
Maybe just when I'm sitting here.
Whoa. Hey. How's it going, everybody?
Hey.
It is Sunday, December 20th. And we're going to
Approaching Christmas.
approaching
like
Christmas
train.
week.
It just doesn't feel real. I think I probably feel like that every Christmas, but
What do you think Santa's doing right now?
making all the toys.
Okay.
Checking the list.
The elves do that. Duh.
Checking the lists. Seeing if you're a good boy or a bad boy.
If you're Santa and you're watching this video, tell us what you're doing right now. We just watched the Santa Claus.
Such a good movie.
Somebody's got to holler at me about how good the Santa Claus is. Like, Tim Allen was great in that movie. It explained a ton of questions I had about how Santa does what Santa does. I mean, it was really eye-opening for me.
Great documentary.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
it's exactly right.
Such a cute movie.
Yeah, so as people are jumping in, I see the room's getting populated up. So as you jump in, give us a holler so we know who's in here. Makes it way easier. Make our lives easier, please. It makes it way easier for us to know who I'm talking to. Because otherwise, I just see a number of, like, as people jump in and jump out, I don't know who's hanging out with us. So
yeah, it's fun to know who's here with us.
Yeah, so give us a shout in the comments, and we'll go for it. So the flow of the kind of Sunday Fun Day Hangout is we're going to talk about the two shows that came out this week. We had a Marriage Monday show come out and Family Friday show come out. So we'll talk about those a little bit. Maybe talk just a little bit about the week and how things have gone this week. Love to hear how y'all's week has gone. If you have questions about the stuff that we put out this week, love to have you put those in the comments. But otherwise, we'll just chat it up with you a little bit. If you have questions just generally or about us, you're welcome to throw those in there too, or about our kids. They were ornery tonight. So if anybody would like a child, feel free to put that in the comments right down there below. We'll send one your way. Terrible. It's the Christmas season, and we're willing to be very generous.
Oh, okay.
Am I right?
No, that's terrible.
Well, it's kind of true. Well, guys, awesome. Seriously, thanks for joining us. So the question then of the day, now that we've got a few folks in here, the question of the day is, as you reflect on the story of Jesus' birth in the Bible, what is your favorite part of the story? I'd love to hear some of you guys' thoughts. As you reflect on that, this is the time of the year where sort of collectively as a church, we're spending some time thinking about Christ coming down in human form to live and dwell among us, right? We see clearly from the Bible that equality with God was not something that Jesus desired, right? He desired to come down to earth, take human flesh form, and spend time living amongst us as a man. Why? Because he knew there was a plan from the Garden of Eden, from the moment we chose as mankind through Adam and Eve to sin. There was a plan for our salvation, and we get to celebrate, this time of year collectively. Right? We see everybody around us celebrating the birth of Christ. I hope that you guys as a family, your family, I hope you celebrate the birth of Christ daily, right? I mean, we shouldn't just be waiting till a certain time of year to be celebrating that. But as we think specifically about that this year, please put down in the comments as you're watching this, what's your favorite part of the story? Is it Mary? Is it Joseph? Is it the shepherds, is it something specific that as you think about that story, you think, man, this is really what's impactful to me as I reflect on that story. Love to hear what's impactful for you guys, and go from there. So with that set up, feel free to put those in the comments. We'll revisit that when we get towards the end of the show. We'll be on here for 20 minutes or so. Then we'll be out. So as we lead up to that, we'll talk a little bit about the shows that we had this week. So,
Right.
Babe, Monday
was planning for the next year. So planning for 2021,
That's right.
right? And what that looks like. I'd love to hear if anybody does that currently, or what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so as I I'll throw a link up to that here in the comments. So as I do that, Babe, explain what that looks like for maybe somebody that hasn't listened to the episode yet.
Yeah, so, in the previous episode, we had talked about year in review and discussing, just talking about how this last year had been, highs and lows. If you had goals, did you meet those goals, and all that sort of thing. And then talking about okay, let's plan for the next year. We're going to plan our schedule for the next year. We're going to set out, we talked about the big idea in this last Monday's episode was the boulders and the rocks and the sand. And so we're going to set in our boulders into our schedule, and our rocks and our sand is just going to kind of fill in throughout the year as it's able to. So that was a big concept in our Monday episode, and just, talking about your goals as a couple for the year, and then your short-term and more longer-term goals, and how are we going to keep making steps to reach those? What does that look like for our family? What are some things that we want to change? What are some things that we want to maybe try out? And how do we implement that into our lives? And then as well, how does all of that culminate with our, what our family's about, our family pillars.
Yeah.
So our code, that's kind of what we've called it, our family code. So that was our Monday episode.
Right. So because it dovetails into that, what are we talking about tomorrow morning?
So then tomorrow we're going to talk about finances.
Specifically planning with regards to finances.
Right. Planning next year in regards to finances. So, talking about really exciting stuff like budgeting, and really going over if budgeting isn't something that you've done, taking the time to go over this last year's spending and what's going on with that. And budgeting is one of those things that's sounds like such a slog, and something that's oh no, I have to be fenced in with this budget. But the reality is we make the money that we make, right? You're fenced in by the money that you make. And if you're not telling your dollars what to do, they're going to just
disappear.
They're just going to float off and go away. And it's going to be very hard to reach any goals because they just disappear.
Yeah, that's true.
It happens so easily.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, we want to talk about we're not going to talk in this episode about here's what percentage of your money should be going to your home payment, or your, should you or shouldn't you have credit cards or any of that.
You can get a lot of great advice from financial gurus.
Totally. There are people way more qualified than we are to talk about that. We're more talking about, as we go through that planning process, what kinds of things are we talking about from a mentality standpoint?
Yep.
And then, what are some tools that we use or that are available if this is not something that you've made a habit of doing? And a shocking number of couples in the United States statistically do not have any sort of budgeting. Right. I mean, you would be amazed the number of people that say they live week to week in their jobs.
Yeah, and you may be one of those couples. And so you might. How are you going to work? Best thing to do then would say, how are we going to work to not live week to week?
That's right.
And to not live that stress all the time.
That's right, because it's really easy to just fall into this is just how our life's always going to be. Mm-hmm. And that can feel stifling. It can feel, oppressive, can really cause issues in the marriage. Statistically, when people give reasons for divorce, then the number one reason is finances.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be that way, right? Let's plan together as a couple so that our finances can be something that unifies us, not something that drives us apart.
Right.
Awesome, babe. So what about Friday? What did we talk about on Friday?
We talked about 12 things that you can do this week with your family to do up Christmas stuff, like have some fun together, fun things that are either free or very inexpensive to celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, so I'm throwing the link up for that here right now in the comments. Love for you to check that out. So, one thing that we talked about in an earlier episode in December is how much stress we can feel, particularly as parents of younger kids, to really make this season special.
Mm-hmm.
With all the movies, we just watched The Santa Claus. We talked about that at the beginning of this episode tonight, this live event tonight. There's so many movies and all that out there that are like, we got to make it special for our kids. We got to make it, this is the season of memories. We got to do all these things. It'd be really stressful to try and figure out, well, what can we do and what can we afford to do? And shoot, this year we got a whole nother, issue on top of that of what things are we allowed to do, with our loving overlords telling us what we can and can't do. So anyway, I think all 12 of the things that we talked about in our video, all 12 of them are both cheap or free and completely COVID independent. Like there aren't any of those things that can't be done because of the vid. So that's what we talked about on Friday. Love for you to check that out, and we want to know: are there things that you guys do, to make this season special that we missed out on in that video? Love for you to throw that in the comments as well.
Yep.
So this Friday, what are we doing? It's kind of a different Friday.
This Friday is a little bit different. So I have always wanted to send out a Christmas card, but I never do it because it's kind of a daunting task. Like, I don't have any addresses, and I love the Christmas cards that come to me that have like the letter front and back side that's fully filled out.
Oh yeah, Andrea wants the full deal.
I do.
The full life story
on what's been going on in that family's life for the last year. I love it. Yeah. And with pictures in the card, I think it's great. So I've always wanted to do something like that, but I never have. So we're doing a Christmas card this year on our Family Friday. It's going to be what we would have put in our Christmas card.
That's right.
In video form.
That's right. So, we thought what we would do is just talk about the year, right? And maybe, if you have watched our channel for a while and you remember back when we did the diary, it'll be kind of like that, but for the year.
Right.
And for us, selfishly, we're gonna tape that, and then we're just gonna send that link out to friends and family and people that might want to know what we got up to this year.
Yep. So that's what we're doing on Friday.
That's right. So,
and if you send Christmas cards, send us one. You can
totally
DM us for our address if you don't have it, but we love getting Christmas cards from people, and then we keep them. And pray for those people throughout the year.
That's right. So selfishly, if you want at least one family to be praying for you this year, you need to send us a message through our Facebook page and ask for our address.
Yeah, and it's such a fun thing to do with Christmas cards. So put them in those. What are they? Rings.
The little binder rings. You can just buy the ring and then one hole punch.
And put just one hole in all the Christmas cards and put them on that binder ring, and then you can have them all and then pray for one of those families like every night, and you just keep rotating through them. So maybe you get to them 5 times each year or whatever. Yeah. Such a cool thing.
It's a really great idea and a really great way to use those. It's something more than, oh, that's nice, and then throw it away. Mm-hmm. It's great. Okay, so I mentioned it earlier. We've got some different people in here now, so I want to make sure to mention it again as well. I want to know tonight, if you're willing to post it up, what is your favorite part of the story of Jesus' birth? Is there something about that story where you go, man, this is really the part of me that always stands out, or the part of that story that always stands out to me? So we've got about 5 minutes or so left of the live stream. Love for you to put in either, if it's a verse, I'd love to read it and talk about it here with the group a little bit. If it's a part of the story, even if it doesn't have to be deeply theological to you, maybe there's just a part of it that really resonates with you. Love for you to put those thoughts in the comments, and we will talk a little bit about some of the other stuff we got going on this week, and then we will finish off with reading those comments and or sharing what our favorite parts of the Christmas story are.
Yeah.
So, what's the week look like this week?
For what?
For just the week.
Oh. Well, it's going to be nice for a couple days.
Yeah.
I mean, nice for here.
Yep.
So, we'll probably try to do a little bit outside.
Yep.
We're going to get together with a friend one day. And I'm going to try to, wrap presents and prep for Christmas.
Yeah, we've got the privilege this week of being able to sit down with a couple of couples,
right,
and kind of just talk about life with them and hopefully pray over them and do life together. So if you think of it the next couple of nights to pray for us, that'd be amazing. Just so we'd have wisdom and be able to represent God's heart for marriage well. So we'd appreciate that. And then, then family comes into town, get to do we've got a super quiet Christmas Eve and Christmas this year. Mm-hmm. Because neither of our families come in until after Christmas this year. So we've got some really dear friends that we have a Christmas Eve tradition with, where we go out and have dinner together on Christmas Eve after church. So we're planning on doing that, and then, man, Christmas Day is going to be chill.
Just here all day long.
Right.
Yeah, we've never had such a chill Christmas.
So our anniversary, by the way, 15 years married. Now, as of last Thursday.
That seems crazy.
It is crazy. So because anniversary and Christmas are so close together, sometimes...
And my mom's birthday. We got married on my mom's birthday.
Right. Sometimes I get my Christmas gift early as an anniversary gift. That happened this year. And I got one of those.
Yeah, so now I have to figure out a Christmas gift for him.
Right. I got one. See how I did that? I got one of those Nespresso coffee machines. That's changed my world.
I don't get it.
No, my world is different.
I don't get it.
I see the world differently than I did.
I have a friend that helps to convince me I need to get this Nespresso for Nathan because thanks, Kara.
Yeah, I want to hug you on a mountain.
Because he really, really wanted this. And she was saying to Nathan one day that she actually goes to bed early sometimes so that the night is shorter, so she can wake up and have her Nespresso.
Sorry, Kara, that's out now.
I don't think she cares.
Yeah, that made me laugh. That is totally true as well. I'm not much of an evening coffee guy, but I want coffee now every evening just because it's so amazing. It's frothy and delicious.
How does it not keep you up? I'm not.
It does. That's why I don't drink it at night.
I don't do coffee at all.
Yeah.
I think it's disgusting.
Yeah. Priscilla said, "Love the list of 12. Really glad to hear that.
Oh, thanks.
Good reminders and ideas. You'll be doing some of those this week. That's great. Please send us a comment, Priscilla. Let us know how that goes.
What'd you like?
Did they go over well? Did they go over poorly? All right. So then you said Christ's birth for you. So again, the question for those that maybe just popped on to catch the end of this, the question of the day was, what part of the story of the birth of Christ really resonates with you? Is there a part of the story in either Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, or all of them, that really resonates with you about the story of Jesus' birth? And so in an answer to that question, Priscilla says, I love that it's the beginning of the salvation story. No birth of Jesus, then no substitutionary atonement.
Yeah.
I'm thankful. That's right. So that if you're watching and you go, I don't know what substitutionary atonement is, the amazing thing about the life and death of Christ is that he lived the perfect life that we can't, right? We all, if we're honest with ourselves, we all sin. He didn't. He lived the perfect life from birth to death, therefore fulfilling the law and the prophets, right? Because prior to Jesus' birth, the only way that we could spend eternity with Christ, with God, was by living a perfect life, fulfilling the law in thought, word, and deed our entire lives.
But of course, that wasn't possible.
Not possible. And then Jesus came down to earth as a human, fully human, right? We got to be honest, fully human and fully God, but fully human, tempted in all ways as we were tempted, lived the perfect life, and died as a sacrifice for us. And so the substitutionary part is when we accept the free gift of faith in of grace from God through Jesus, through faith. We are substituted in his place, and his perfect life and blood atones for our sin. That's the substitutionary atonement part.
And we don't
which
have
is amazing.
So before Jesus, the people who the Jewish people, they would have to use sacrifices to cover their sin, because there was no perfect savior for them at that point. So
that's right.
Before Jesus was born. And so we don't have, thank God, we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, Priscilla, you bring up indirectly a great point that we oftentimes forget, which is when we sin, something dies.
Yeah, there always has to be a death.
That's how sin works. And we see that from the very moment of the original sin. Do you remember when Adam and Eve sinned, what was their first thing? They realized, oh no, we're naked. And they created clothing for themselves. Right? These people that had lived their whole lives naked, walking in the garden in the cool of the evening, walking and talking with God, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, I'm ashamed because I'm naked. And so they made clothing out of fig leaves, which if you've ever had a chance to be around a fig vine, a fig tree, then you'll know the leaves you would not want to make clothing out of them for yourself. They're scratchy and will make your skin irritated and itchy. Well, this is what they chose to make clothing out of. Well, when God came down, confronted them on what they had done, we see right from that very first encounter that God made clothing for them. And what did he make it out of?
Animal skin.
Animal skin.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So even in that very first sin moment, we see this principle that when we sin, something dies. And oftentimes it's us, right? How often have we gotten caught up in a sin or seen someone else that's gotten caught up in a sin that's literally killing them? But that's the reality. And so to bring it full circle, Priscilla, you're right. The birth of Christ is the beginning of the greatest love story ever played out here on this earth. And that's the story of Christ's love for us. Because he chose to be the death that we deserved. And then, of course, the story doesn't end there, because 3 days later he rose again, right, defeating death and taking back the deed. You look in Revelation and you see Jesus take back the deed of earth that we as humans coughed up to the devil. Mm-hmm. So awesome. That's a great call. Great call.
Thanks for telling us.
Yeah, totally. Anybody else babe, I'll have you share while we're waiting. But if there's anybody else that wants to share, what's your favorite part of the story, or maybe you have a question about the story of Jesus' birth, love to throw those on there. 'Tis the week where we're thinking about some of these things collectively, and would love to know what your favorite part of the story is.
I think my favorite part probably changes year to year based on what I'm feeling in the moment. Kind of what's going on in my heart, probably.
Sure.
But I would say this year it's probably, maybe the Bible doesn't give all the details all the time, but we can see Mary's attitude to being told you are going to carry the Son of God, and her just acceptance of that is amazing to me. I love that her, we don't see any worry. It's not like, what are people going to think? What am I going to do? Is Joseph even going to stay with me? What is he going to think? Is he going to leave me? Am I going to be a single mom? And how is that all gonna, all that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see any of that. It's just this acceptance and
Yeah.
awe of what's happening. And I have to imagine too that there had to have been this deep thought of the Bible, the scriptures that have prophesied this is coming true, and I'm part of that. Like this life that I live for the Lord is, it's all coming to this moment.
You're talking about from Mary's standpoint,
right? From her standpoint, and that's crazy in and of itself, and he's doing it in a really weird, like, I just think I'd be all flustered and this is the weirdest way and why are we doing it this way, and I can't be a single lady and pregnant. That's so wrong, and especially pregnant with the Savior. But it just seems like she had this acceptance, and that's what I love, like just the acceptance and love and trust for the Lord and just kind of moving forward.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so that's this year. I think that's
that's great.
What stands out the most to me.
Perfect. That's good. Well, I'll go ahead and share mine, and we'll close it down. So the thing that stands out to me, and this is something I discovered a couple of years back, but it never gets old, me resonating on this because I find it to be such an amazing thing. If you turn to Matthew, the first chapter of Matthew, you find most of the first chapter of Matthew is a discussion of the genealogy of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see this genealogy of Jesus. And as you look through it, so if you look through genealogies in the Bible, there's one thing you generally don't see. Do you know what it is? Women. That's right. Generally not women listed out in genealogies in the Bible. And if there are, here's a little tip when you study the Bible. If you do come across women in any genealogy, stop and figure out who that is.
Mm-hmm.
Because that person is in there for a specific reason. Well, I find it really telling about the family that God chose to insert Jesus into
Mm-hmm.
as we look back through the genealogy of Christ. So I want to read just a couple of verses. Verse 5 and verse 6 are the only two verses I'm going to read. Other than Mary, there are 3 women listed in the genealogy of Christ. All 3 of them are in either 5 or 6, which I'm going to read right now. It says, Solomon was the father of Boaz, parenthetical, whose mother was Rahab.
Mm-hmm.
Boaz was the mother of Obed, parenthetical, whose mother was Ruth. There's 2 of them. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother was Bathsheba, the widow of Uriah. For one thing, there's a huge marriage lesson to be learned in that one single parenthetical about Bathsheba.
She was described as the widow of Uriah, not the wife of David.
That's right. And in all likelihood, she spent a considerably longer part of her life as the husband of David than she did the husband of Uriah. But in God's economy and in God's mind, she was not the husband of David. She was the widow of Uriah. There's something to learn about what God thinks about marriage and our separation from marriage. And I think that verse is a really good exhibit as we think about that. But the first 2 are the ones I want to talk about, Rahab and Ruth. Mm-hmm. So Rahab goes all the way back to the story of Jericho. You can go back and look at that. I encourage you to do it. And Rahab was a prostitute. And her story was that some spies from Israel came into Jericho to scout out the city, and she hid them from the authorities. And as she's hiding them and they're sharing what God's going to do to the city of Jericho, she comes to a realization that Yahweh is God. And she tells them, I will hide you if your God will remember me on the day that he brings judgment against Jericho. She hides them in. They promise her if she will hang a scarlet thread out of her window, that God will save her. And there's a whole study on the scarlet thread and the meaning behind that, and that's amazing. Mm-hmm. But she's a prostitute. Okay, I want to make sure we understand that. And yet when the city of Jericho falls, she remains safe in the only tower that's still standing when the city falls. She's in the genealogy of Christ, a prostitute.
Right.
Ruth wasn't even an Israelite, right? Ruth was a Moabite, and she came with Naomi. If you remember that story, Naomi was her mother-in-law. Ruth and Naomi had 2 sons, and Ruth and another woman were married to her sons. The sons died. Naomi says, I'm going back to be with my people. And Ruth commits to her, where you go, I will go, and your God will be my God. Yeah. God ends up through this crazy set of circumstances. This man comes into Ruth's life, serves as her what's called a kinsman redeemer in the Bible, which I'd encourage you to study up on what that means, because in Revelation, Jesus is set up as the kinsman redeemer of the earth. Mm-hmm. So the 2 women that we talked about, Rahab, who was a prostitute, Ruth, who wasn't even an Israelite and was a widow, and those are 2 of the 3 women that God identifies in the genealogy of the Savior of the world and his only son.
Well, and the third,
the other one being Bathsheba, who was an adulteress. Yeah. That's right. Those are the women. There were honorable, godly women in Jesus' genealogy. Sure. We can see that because of the Old Testament. Yet these are the ones that he chose to identify. So what do I take away from that? It's really easy for us as human beings who've made mistakes to look at the way we stand before the Lord and go, I don't even know how to relate to God because of the things that I've done, right? I've screwed this up so badly. I've done such horrible things. I've lived in open rebellion to him. I've been a prostitute. I've chosen to not align myself with his people. I've persecuted his people as the Moabites did the Israelites. I've gone against God's will for my life. What hope is there for me? I want you to go, when you have those thoughts, and read Matthew chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. And remember, God didn't require these people to be all buttoned up and put together when he chose to put them in his family. He chose to put them in his family because they chose to be available to his will. Right. And that's the biggest thing. As we come upon the end of a year and the beginning of a new year, it's easy for us to look in the rearview mirror at all the things we've done wrong. But let's look through the windshield and not in the rearview mirror. And let's commit right now to our spouse, to our kids, to our families, but ultimately, mostly to the Lord, to say, Lord, I haven't done it all right, but like Rahab, like Ruth, like Bathsheba, I desire to be a man or woman used by you, grafted into your family, as we know that we are when we accept him as our Lord and Savior. So I hope that encourages you. Man, it encourages the heck out of me when I look at that and look at the women that God chose to align his only son with. Right. And I got to imagine that as Jesus studied his family line, he couldn't have been prouder of those women that are the history of his family. So I hope you're encouraged by that. Guys, if you watch this later on and you have favorite parts of the story of Jesus' birth, love to have you share it in the comments. We really do love to hear, what you guys like, what strikes you, what things are interesting to you. Man, each and every person who's watching this, who watches our channel, if you watch this on there when it's posted up later, we love every one of you guys. We've been doing this now for 6 months, and we've been so blessed by the support. We've been blessed by the stories of what God's doing through some of the things that we've posted up. We're just a couple that's been through some stuff, and to God's glory, he saw us through it, and we desire his best for each and every one of you guys. So pray that you would have a very Merry Christmas. Thanks, guys, so much for joining us. Anything else on your end, babe?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. We will see you next Sunday, I believe. Until then, remember, God is for your family.